What's going on, everybody? This is Luca, host of Myth, Magic, and Movies, and today we are going to be starting our Harry Potter series where we'll be reviewing all of the Harry Potter movies as well as Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. So today, Christian Steadfast Lov will be coming on to discuss and review Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which came out in 2001. And from there, we'll be reviewing other films such as The Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, so on and so forth. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, and remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and let's dive into this review. So today we're taking a look at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and that came out in 2001. And before that, anybody who grew up in the 90s was pretty much familiar with the Harry Potter books. I remember getting all the way up to Goblet of Fire, and then after that, I was like, I just checked out. But Christian, you're a huge Harry Potter fan. What is it about the Potterverse that appeals to you? What is it about it that just draws you in like no other franchise?
Well, there's something about magic in general for me. Like I grew up in the church, and it was always like this, like don't touch magic, right? Like it was faux pas, like it's evil, right? It's like whoa, wait a second. But you guys talk about miracles. Yeah, yeah, we talk about miracles. Well, that's pretty magical. Yeah, yeah. So I've found that I've been able to walk out past a lot of my grooming and religious backgrounds when it comes to magic in a way where like they use innocence. They brought kids to it. It wasn't really like coming out as this dark thing, right? But they also kept those dark elements in that like it's a fight against evil, right? Even in the magic world, it's not like everything magic is evil, right? So for me, it was this thing of like kind of overcoming that world I'm in of like you can't enjoy the things that are magical because it's witchcraft and this and that. So I love the universe because it's a place where I can feel safe away from those judgments and manipulations. And it's like it's fantasy. It's just an amazing world of like everything is like how Harry Potter first saw for the first time going to school, all these new cool things like a chocolate frog hopping and pictures moving. And so it was just like, I didn't get to read the books when I was younger. I was a little bit older than some of the kids that were running those books. But I went back to them as an adult. So my first experience with the Potter universe was visual,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like I said, it was like living in this fantasy of like anything is possible. Yet, we talked about this before, with these limitations. And I started kind of studying, well, why is this guy more powerful than this guy? Why does this guy's wand work so much better with him? So there was just all these like kind of rabbit holes you could run into with each character, each wand, each power. And so I just loved the complexity of the magical verse, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because when we're first introduced to the universe in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I mean, we're not going in there with the expectation that we're going to get all the answers immediately.
Sure.
It's sort of introducing elements in here that are going to lead up to what we'll see several years later.
A lot of foreshadowing, though, a whole lot of foreshadowing.
I mean, the big one for me was when he was at Ollivander's and and he was selecting a wand, and Ollivander tells him about there's only one other wand, and the person who used it did great and terrible things with it. So right off the bat, that kind of piques your interest, and you're like, ooh, I wonder where that's going to go. And and when we do get near the end of our Harry Potter review, I think we'll see a huge payoff there. Um, but but as someone who read the book, I mean, I'm going in there with a completely different mindset than somebody such as yourself, who came to it, via film first
Watching the
before
first
being,
time.
yeah, via
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
So can you talk about what was it? What were the elements within the movie that kind of that stuck out to you in terms of the visual elements, the motifs, the way that the characters interacted with one another?
Well, again, I'll go back to this, the innocence of character. The kids were so young. I mean, we're talking about
Hmm.
grade school age, and it's like it really kind of pulls you in of like the excitement, right? Like they were really smart about doing it in a way where like, Harry's viewpoint was like just so astonished by everything. He's just dumbfounded. And I think that's kind of the feeling I had going into it. I'm just kind of like, wow, little dragons, they're knocking on the wall and all the bricks move. And, you know, my thing is like, imagine that for yourself. Put yourself in a position where you're watching a movie, it all feels fantasy. But if you can try to put yourself into their shoes, how would you respond to that? That's kind of how I am about movies I enjoy. Like, how would I feel as this character? How would I interact with this environment? And if I was in it and this was real life.
Hmm.
And for Harry Potter, it was like everything was just so fun. Like people flying by on brooms. Like, yeah, obviously, you know, um, that's just not something we're going to be able to understand in real life, right? You can understand candy being, and some of the fun stuff that they do, but they take it to that next level where it's like every kid's imagination wants to go here. And so I was living a childhood dream in the sense of like, man, you know, this is a perfect world. I would love to be at Hogwarts School of
Hmm.
Witches and Wizards, right? Like I'd be about that. And so, yeah, I think it personalized, it pulled me in where I was just so enthralled by it all that I was like, man, this is a place I want to keep visiting. So when they started making, you know, these long, I mean, they were long movies and I love that. And I've watched them all so many times. It's silly. Like,
Hmm.
and I still go back to them, almost annually. We were doing it with my kids watching a Harry Potter marathon every Christmas. And they still do it even though, I'm not in their household anymore. It's like they still run that. And so it's influential. I think Harry Potter gets into your house, gets into your home. I still have quotes, with the wands, and I'm still looking for wands. Like I'm still looking for my wand, if that makes any sense, right? And so, yeah, no, I've immersed myself from the beginning, with that innocence and that extra, or like just so vibrant and so cool and so much movement. But as we've gone towards outside of that, things get darker and there's more reality to it. So I love the Sorcerer Stone because we still have so much innocence, and like the trauma was kind of behind him. He doesn't really remember any of it as a baby. So it's really lighthearted to begin with.
Right.
Really childhood, you know, kid in the candy store. So that's why I like the Sorcerer's Stone, because we're walking into it really just excited for the
Yeah,
adventure.
and to your point too, because because for me, I got into the Harry Potter books around 97, 98. When I was still in elementary school, so I could identify with it because a lot of the things that they were portraying in the books, you kind of felt like, man, to your point, I totally wish I could be there because you're just on the cusp of, moving away from childhood into into your teenage years. So you kind of have this notion of, you can still be a child and it's still okay to look at the world through childlike eyes,
Yeah,
and not be shamed for it. What I really, really found interesting too is the fact, again, to your point, it's this juxtaposition of innocence, but also of of serious matters. I mean, as much as we can identify and say that we know how it feels to be a kid and look through the magical world, through a different lens than the way we would look at it now as adults, is the fact that there is a very adult matter that comes into view, and it's the Sorcerer's Stone. And we don't automatically see what's going on here because we start seeing hints here and there. The first time is when Hagrid takes Harry to Diagon Alley and they go to Gringotts, right? And they go into that special vault, but Hagrid is very tight-lipped about what's going on here. But as the movie progresses, we begin to see more elements. We see Fluffy, for instance, the three-headed dog, and then we learn more about the different traps and different spells, and then we finally learn about the Sorcerer's Stone, or as it's historically known, the Philosopher's Stone, which is the elixir of life, basically. Um, and you would think for a moment, oh, like it's a magical novel or a magical movie. Of course, they're going to include magical elements from history in there, but there are very much adult implications to the Philosopher's Stone, namely immortality, right? Because when we're kids, we don't really think too much about what's going to happen to us later on in life.
Finality, yeah,
Right,
finality of
right.
life, yeah.
But at the ages that we are, we begin to think maybe maybe that's a question we need to address here. So what were your thoughts about the Sorcerer's Stone? Did you think that was the perfect motif for this movie, or do you think maybe they could have gone with a different angle on
I
that one?
think I think they did a good job in the fact that they didn't give you any information.
Hmm.
You're left as the watcher or the reader, um, basically on the edge of your seat, hoping to get a little bit more information to understand what's going on, and you really don't. Like, even when he takes the stone and smashes the guy's face with it, and he turns to dust. Remember at the end there, and he just
Yeah,
touched him with
Quirrell.
it. He
Yeah.
just touched him, and it just like the power. It wasn't even just immortality for him. There was also this ability to have a powerful effect on the world around you. So it was like again in the hands of the innocent kid, protecting himself. It was safe, and then it's like one of these things where like this particular item is like the power stone. Like it's the power stone in Harry Potter, right?
Right.
And so we don't even know what we got. They didn't tell us anything about the Deathly Hollows. We don't have any insight to what this thing is. We just know there's some random thing that is magical that Voldemort wants to get his hands on, right? And
Yeah,
that's
because
that's
he's stuck in Quirrell's body,
yeah,
basically. He's
we don't
basically
really
leeching on
know anything else though. We don't know really what this thing is and what it's capable of. The whole hush hush thing is really just building up the power of it for us. It's giving us insight that this is something, but we don't know what that something is. So I love it because, the mystery that they keep us holding on to, you have to wait. You got to go into the journey. You got to walk down the hallway to get to the end, right? And then you got to open the door, right? Because you got to pay attention, figure out what's going on, and go to the next movie. You can't just watch The Sorcerer's Stone and be like, that was great. That's Harry Potter. That's it.
right. You know everything. After
Yeah, that's
watching that
it.
movie.
Now we
Yeah.
got it. No, that is literally like they barely gave us anything, and that's what I like is they kind of left us with to be continued, and the stone doesn't really even come back into play for many movies later,
Hmm.
and so it's like yeah, it's kind of weird the start and the end because it was the thing that pretty much he had right when Voldemort was trying to kill him, and his parents came. Like, it was something about him coming back to life, and I don't remember if that was the reason that it was the deal. What was the reason that
So if you'll remember, what happened was Voldemort, he tried to kill Harry as a baby, but for whatever reason, the spell rebounded and destroyed his body. So Voldemort ended up becoming a sort of parasite on the Quirrell. That's why Quirrell was wearing the turban,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And so the I and we see hints of it throughout the movie because you remember when Hagrid takes Malfoy, Hermione, and Harry into the Dark Forest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're looking for whoever's killing the unicorns, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then Ferenz explains to Harry that that drinking unicorn's blood, is both a blessing and a curse because it will extend
Mortality.
your life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's pretty much half a life. And the idea, the entire idea was for Voldemort to get his own body because
Yeah.
because obviously it sucks
He was
having to
living
share
in
your body with someone else.
Horcruxes, right? He was
Yeah.
split all over the place, yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
So that's the reason why he wanted the stone. But what was really really interesting because again it just goes back to the way that J.K. Rowling and the directors expertly kind of placed everything. When we see the Mirror of Erised at first, right?
mm,
We understand it to be it's not really a device that will grant your wishes. It just shows you what
Shows your
your innermost
desires.
desires. Right.
Yeah.
So when we see it near the end, when Harry kind of sees himself and then his reflection winks and sticks the stone in his pocket,
Pocket.
it
Yeah.
it kind of comes full circle, because then you begin to understand it's it's more than what it appears to be. Because and my thing is that Dumbledore kind of, he's not lying to Harry, but he's only telling him what he needs to know,
Yeah. 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 Through
right?
the whole movie, it's like that though.
Yeah.
Through all of
Be-
them. I mean.
and to your point, because it goes back to the idea of innocence. I mean, you kind of get the feeling that the professors around them are trying to protect the children's innocence,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep.
But at some point, whether it's their own volition or through circumstances, they're kind of
They gotta tell
thrust
them.
into they're
Yep.
thrust into this adult situation. And
Yeah.
by the time you get to the end, it's like they've completed the hero's journey, but they can no longer go back to where they were,
I mean, you
right?
remember in the Goblet of Fire when Harry's name was in, and then the Dumbledore like literally ransacks him with a group of teachers behind him and professors, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Did you put your name in this?" You know, and like he kind of loses it on him. Like that is a moment of like complete innocence gone, right? Like he
Right,
was,
but it's a
they had
continual
to just let it all
motif.
come down, right?
It's a continual motif, because because even then there is a sort of need to want to
Protection.
go back to the age of innocence,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
no, they're protecting him. He's not 18. He's not, this is dangerous. And that's why Dumbledore is mad, is because he's like, did you do this? Like this is your life. You are important. And that's what
Right.
I love about the group of the three of them, right? And they're so important and they're so vital and significant and they keep getting in trouble, but the teachers keep realizing like, hey, there's something with this group of three here that like we kind of have to let them run a little bit, right? Like we have to let our hands off a little bit and let them do a little bit more and let that innocence and that protection go. And it goes on more and more. Remember, Dumbledore gave Hermione that time necklace, right?
Yeah, from
He
Azkaban.
knew,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's doing stuff to progress their maturity and their their power, if you will, and experience. Because Harry and all three of them get stronger as they experience these traumas and these things they have to do, like the troll and whatnot, right? Like literally stop the troll. And so I think, yeah, the Sorcerer's Stone in that particular movie, you know, they seem like meddling kids, right? That's all it seems like. What are you kids? Why are you always in the place where something bad has happened? It's
Hmm.
always you three, right? That's what they kind of and they get to, and it's like yeah, and that is kind of a repeating factor throughout the movies, but as it goes on, it seems the teachers have a little less and less protection, a little more and more like, okay, we got to let these guys do their thing because
Well, I was going to say, speaking of protection, I do want to bring in Professor Snape, right? Because
yeah, yeah,
we see a huge tense relationship between the two, because as we'll learn later on in other movies and books, Snape had a thing for Harry's mother when they were
and
younger, right?
disliked his dad. Let's keep it real. Like the
Yeah.
real disdain
I mean, he was
is
his
just
rival, for God's
James.
sakes,
Yeah, yeah, it's just James Potter was like the worst for him,
hmm
and then
but
he
at
took
the
his love of his life away from him.
same time, I mean, you also kind of get the feeling that Snape, I wouldn't say love, but he cares for Harry in his own way.
Yeah, yeah, no, for
Um,
sure. He sees his mom.
you're right. Yeah, the eyes. It's the eyes, and I remember distinctly reading in the books. Snape. Hagrid and Snape. They all said the same thing to Harry. You look like your father, but you have your mother's eyes, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And that's just so piercing, because even in the movies, like, you kind of get shots where we see Harry's eyes kind of glow distinctively. It's a sort of kind of let us know, hey, you know his mother still lives on through
And
through
she
him.
she was powerful. She was one of the most powerful witches,
Right,
you know,
right.
and they don't talk a lot about their dad and their mom. It kind of comes out later on, and how power, you know, people tell stories between
Well, the dad, they kind of
experiences.
mention what in Quidditch, because they're like, oh yeah, your
Yeah.
dad was also in the Quidditch team. But to go back to Snape, I mean, because because at first, when we look at Snape, we're kind of following the kid's logic, right? We're all thinking Snape is the bad one here because he looks and just behaves in such a way that you would think, oh, he's definitely the bad guy here. but later you come to find out that Snape has actually been the one who's been trying to do his best to protect Harry, just like at the Quidditch match.
Yeah.
When
Yep.
when Harry's broomstick goes haywire and he's
Sure, they
trying
think
to,
it's him, but it's the guy
yeah,
behind him. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly, because his eyes are like locked onto
Countering.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I will say this too because Richard Harris, I think, plays a phenomenal Dumbledore in this one, and it's sad that he passed away before he could, portray the role any further. But what were your thoughts about how
Oh
Dumbledore was
man.
introduced?
Well, okay. So, this is
You
a
may have to keep it
particular
short,
thing for
Christian.
me. Yeah, this is a particular one for me. So I'll go quick with it. The big thing for me is the age and the antiqueness of the man that they portrayed. I
Hmm.
like that. It is sad that he passed away and he didn't get to follow suit, but I also think that was the casting problem. When they brought the next Dumbledore in, he was strong. He was bold. He was old. You could tell he was, had years under him, but he was fierce.
Yeah, he had a Gandalf quality to him.
Yeah, and it's terrible that the first guy just wonderful in the way that he talked to the kids and the interaction of the schooling and he was very soft and gentle and kind of like quirky, with the kids or with Harry. He definitely loved Harry, but he missed that the rest of the books. He wouldn't have survived the rest of the books and the rest of the stories per
Hmm.
se in his character, like the change they made. This guy was perfect.
Michael Gambon. Yeah.
Yeah, just perfect. But again, I go back and I watch the Sorcerer's Stone, and that's one of the things I always think about is, hey, thank God for this guy because, he introduced Harry Potter to everybody, and he didn't get to live it out, but like he'll live forever in that role. Not everybody even knows that they're different guys. I'm just like, what do you mean? How do you not? What do you mean you don't notice? One guy's like 1,000 years old, the other one's 100. It's like yeah, that's just kind of how. But you know what I mean? I feel like the first one you could hit him and just dust would come off of him,
He's very fragile. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the fragility of it. And so that's the thing. It didn't work for me. But in the first one, it didn't really matter. It didn't take away from the movie,
Yeah,
you
because it was
know.
more exposition than action, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the role this happens sometimes in movies where they have to cast a new role for the dynamic of the storyline, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm grateful for the introduction. It's very classic. Harry's super young, Dumbledore's super old. Everything's kind of like just introductory. They don't go crazy on all the magic stuff per se right away. But it gets so good uh after the Sorcerer's Stone too. Like it just keeps getting better. So for me, you know, I love him. I love everything about the first movie. It's just so vintage and so great.
So if you had to pick one, one thing about the Sorcerer's Stone that you really didn't like, what would it be?
Um, I guess I would say it's kind of like it reminds me of like a Home Alone movie sometimes, the music and like like the feasting. I think the one thing with me is like they kind of pushed through and didn't give a lot of details. They were just too busy trying to, to pick the story from the book and turn a big book into a 2-hour movie.
Hmm.
And I think there could have been a lot more if they would have put 30 minutes or 40 minutes in, knowing back then what they know now that we watch 3-hour movies. I
Hmm.
think I would have enjoyed the movie a lot more with more details in the scenes, more character development, you know. I think they pushed it through a little bit fast trying to make the movie and not expand it from the book like I think they could have.
I mean, for me, they omitted Peeves, and I feel like Peeves, in at least in the novel series, was, if not an integral character, he was a mainstay. So I kind of wish they could have, at least introduced the character. But it is what it is.
That happens,
Um,
right?
yeah,
Omission, yeah,
and
omissions
and
in a
and and
movie.
they were going to get a very famous comedian, Rick Mail, to portray Peeves too. And if you've ever seen the Blackadder films, or the Blackadder shows, he does have that energy, that manic energy that you see in Peeves. So it's one of those things where it's like, what might have been, could have been, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can never go back to it again. They can't even if they ever try to remake a Harry Potter movie from the books. Right? Imagine all new characters, all new setting, all the stuff we have now. Would people watch it again? Sure, I think it would still do well if they try to do something like that. But I think we'd always fall back to the true north for the people like us who go back that far. Kids now would know the difference,
Right.
right? But for us, it's hard to kind of change that character once we have it. It's hard to change the environment once it's been stated.
But but I mean, but it was a magical moment too. I mean, not to, no pun intended. Like the movies that we got in the early 2000s, that was
God,
lightning in a bottle.
the train. Yeah, no. Again, like I said, I was just like,
It caught the
I'm in.
zeitgeist. Yeah.
I am in. I'm 1,000%, and I want this magical world. Like I said, for me, like I want to start writing books in regards to my influence from Harry Potter, and then before that, the stuff I do with like Sherlock Holmes. I used to read a lot of that stuff by myself. So, like I
Hmm.
talked about the mystery of um, Sorcerer's Stone, and so it's got me like even years later, like now I'm imposed to do my own thing built off of J.K. Rowling. She's imposed her influence on me by writing such amazing stories for kids that me as an adult now wants to do it further. So I may not like everything about the movie per se, but I completely am a fan, and it started that journey for me where I'm like, I just got the wand ready, just at the ready at all time. And so
Yeah.
keep making them, right? Like I'm gonna point Sorcerer's Stone is the first. I hope there's never a last. The Fantastic Beasts and all the stuff that they're kind of moving on from. There's another whole series they're doing um, about Harry's kid, and so it's just gonna keep living on. That's just amazing to me. And it started there, and I think it's pretty simple. It was a simple, it wasn't complex or crazy. They just a little kid going to school for the first time in a world he's never known and trying to make it. And he's like this big deal and he has no idea why. And
Right.
so, and we start unfolding that, and then they show right from the first movie, they show him literally fighting Voldemort, the person that nobody even wants to say his name and everybody's scared to death. And Harry just smokes him at the end.
I mean, it's the power of love, as
It is.
Dumbledore
It's
said.
always going to be. Yes. Why do you
Yeah.
think my Christian Steadfast Love, man? Like, eh, that's the miracle side of it, not the magical side of it for me, right? Like where they both live in the same place for me,
Hmm.
right? Where people say miracle, I say magic. Where people say magic, I say miracle. It's the same thing. We're it's semantics, and so um, anything that we put our mind to can be done. And so the Sorcerer's Stone was somebody that put intent into life and life as his work, and that's what he and that's a powerful thing, man, obviously, and it was sought out by the most evil and selfish wizard that was on the planet. And so somebody had to do something about it, and it was a high school kid, or even actually
Well,
elementary school at
yeah,
the time, or
elementary school. Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
school probably. I think they
Yeah.
were like probably 10 or 11, 12, something like that. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. The actors were about 11-ish around that time.
That's crazy. So again, that's what I'm saying. Like the victory over the circumstances, right? And
Hmm.
Harry Potter's a winner. He lives in victory over from birth all the way to the end of whatever we see in his life and her storyline. But I loved it. It was a great experience for me, and I'm excited to keep moving on to the next one.
Well, Christian, it was a pleasure having you on, and I look forward to having you back on pretty soon so we can discuss Chamber of Secrets.
For sure. I'll make sure I go spend a little time in the book too before I come out, so I'm not just movie worthy.
I mean, don't worry. I haven't read the books in years myself, so I think you and I are good company.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time as well. And till the next time, we'll do this again.
All right, take it easy, man. Bye.
Happy blessed, brother.